Some thoughts pass quickly, while others refuse to leave. A single decision, conversation, or possibility can spiral into dozens of scenarios, each one analyzed again and again. What begins as a simple attempt to understand something slowly turns into a loop the mind struggles to escape. Overthinking doesn't just fill the mind with more thoughts. It blurs clarity, turning small uncertainties into exhausting mental puzzles that never seem fully resolved. Today, we will talk about the psychology of overthinking everything. So before we start, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. 1. What overthinking really is. Overthinking is one of the most common mental habits people struggle with today. It happens when the mind continues analyzing a situation long after a useful conclusion could have been reached. Instead of helping you solve problems, the thinking process becomes repetitive and unproductive. Many people believe overthinking means they are being careful or responsible, but in reality, it often traps the mind in endless mental loops. You may replay conversations repeatedly, question your decisions, or imagine dozens of possible outcomes for a simple situation. While reflection can help you learn and improve, overthinking rarely produces clarity. Instead, it creates confusion and emotional exhaustion. The brain keeps searching for the perfect answer or the perfect action, even when none exists. Understanding the psychology behind overthinking is the first step toward breaking this cycle. Once you recognize why the brain falls into this habit, it becomes easier to step out of the mental loops and regain control over your thoughts. 2. The brain's need for certainty. One major reason people overthink is the brain's strong desire for certainty. Humans naturally feel uncomfortable when situations are unclear or unpredictable. When the mind encounters uncertainty, it attempts to analyze every detail in order to reduce risk. This instinct was useful in ancient environments where careful thinking helped people avoid danger. However, in modern life, many uncertainties cannot be fully solved through thinking alone. Relationships, career choices, and social interactions often contain unpredictable elements. When the brain tries to force certainty where none exists, it begins analyzing the same information repeatedly. The mind believes that if it keeps thinking long enough, it will eventually discover a perfect solution. Unfortunately, this rarely happens. Instead, the person becomes stuck in a cycle of continuous mental evaluation without reaching a satisfying conclusion. 3. The illusion of control. Overthinking is also connected to the illusion of control. The brain often assumes that thinking more about a situation will somehow influence the outcome. For example, someone might replay a past conversation repeatedly, imagining what they should have said differently. In reality, the event has already happened and cannot be changed. However, the mind continues analyzing it because it feels like doing something productive. This creates a false sense of control over events that are already finished. The brain confuses thinking with action. While careful planning can be helpful for future decisions, analyzing past moments endlessly only drains mental energy. Recognizing that not every situation can be controlled is an important step toward reducing overthinking. 4. Emotional triggers behind overthinking. Overthinking rarely appears without emotional triggers. Feelings like fear, embarrassment, guilt, or uncertainty often activate this mental habit. When the brain senses emotional discomfort, it begins searching for explanations and solutions. For example, after an awkward conversation, the mind may replay the moment repeatedly to understand what went wrong. Similarly, when facing an important decision, the brain may analyze every possible outcome to avoid regret. While this process begins as an attempt to protect you, it can quickly spiral into endless rumination. Emotional intensity keeps the memory or decision active in your mind, making it difficult to move forward. Over time, this habit strengthens the connection between emotional discomfort and constant analysis. 5. The role of self-awareness. People who are highly self-aware are often more vulnerable to overthinking. Self-awareness allows individuals to observe their thoughts, emotions, and behavior in detail. While this ability supports personal growth, it can also lead to excessive internal monitoring. Instead of simply experiencing life, the mind begins analyzing every reaction and decision. Someone might question how they sounded during a conversation, whether their body language was appropriate, or how others might interpret their actions. This constant observation turns everyday situations into mental puzzles. Over time, the person becomes trapped in a pattern where every moment is analyzed instead of lived. 6. Decision fatigue and mental loops. Overthinking frequently leads to decision fatigue. When the brain examines too many possibilities, choosing an option becomes difficult. A simple decision, like what to say in a message, which opportunity to pursue, or how to respond in a situation, can feel overwhelming. The mind evaluates every possible outcome, trying to avoid mistakes. Ironically, this process often delays decisions and increases stress. Instead of moving forward, the person remains stuck analyzing possibilities. The brain becomes trapped in a loop where each thought generates more questions rather than answers. Over time, this habit reduces confidence in decision-making and makes even small choices feel complicated. 7. The connection between anxiety and overthinking. Anxiety and overthinking often reinforce each other. When someone feels anxious, their brain becomes more alert to potential threats or mistakes. This heightened awareness encourages the mind to analyze situations repeatedly in search of problems. Unfortunately, the more someone thinks about possible problems, the more anxious they feel. This creates a cycle where anxiety fuels overthinking, and overthinking increases anxiety. For example, someone preparing for a presentation might repeatedly imagine everything that could go wrong. Each imagined scenario increases worry, which encourages even more thinking. Breaking this cycle requires recognizing when thinking stops being helpful and starts becoming harmful. 8. Why the mind replays the past. A common form of overthinking involves replaying past events. The brain reviews previous experiences because it wants to learn from them. If something embarrassing, confusing, or emotionally intense occurred, the mind may analyze it repeatedly in an attempt to understand it fully. While occasional reflection can provide valuable insight, repeated mental replay rarely produces new information. Instead, it keeps the emotional experience active in the present. The brain mistakenly believes that analyzing the event again will eventually resolve the discomfort. In reality, the mind simply becomes stuck in a pattern of reliving the same moment. 9. Learning to interrupt the cycle. Breaking the habit of overthinking begins with recognizing when the mind enters a mental loop. Once you notice repetitive thoughts that are not producing solutions, it becomes easier to interrupt the cycle. Practical strategies include shifting attention to physical activity, writing thoughts down to release them from your mind, or focusing on breathing to calm mental intensity. These techniques help redirect attention away from endless analysis. 10. Letting thoughts pass without holding them. One of the most effective ways to reduce overthinking is learning to let thoughts pass without attaching meaning to each one. The human brain produces thousands of thoughts every day. Not all of them require attention or analysis. When you treat every thought as important, the mind becomes overwhelmed. By observing thoughts without immediately reacting to them, you allow the brain to process information naturally. If you liked this video and would like to see more like it, please give it the thumbs up, leave a comment, and click the button to subscribe.